Tired of knowing what to do but freezing when it's hard? In this audiobook, you'll get the exact blueprint to rewire your brain and crush tough tasks, starting today. Welcome to Audiobook World, your masterclass in self-improvement audiobooks that deliver real-life hacks. Inside, discover 3 game changers: how to override mental blocks instantly, build unbreakable discipline without willpower, and turn resistance into automatic action across all 8 chapters. Hit subscribe now and use timestamps to jump in. Let's force your brain to win. Chapter 1. The war you feel but cannot name. You feel it every morning, long before your eyes fully open. That small hesitation, that quiet hug, pulling you back toward what is familiar, what is safe, what requires nothing from you. It whispers, "Stay where you are. There's no need to push. There's no need to rise. Not yet." Most people mistake that whisper for laziness. They mistake it for lack of motivation, lack of passion, lack of discipline. But you already know, somewhere deep inside, that the truth is very different. That whisper is not your weakness. It is your wiring. And right now, in this moment, as you listen to these words, you are standing in the invisible battlefield between the life you want and the life you've settled for. This is not a battlefield with noise or chaos or flashing danger. It's a battlefield made of silence, a war fought inside your own mind, with no witnesses, no applause, and no medals. Yet everything you dream of depends on whether you win this quiet war. So let us begin here, at the most important place. Not with tactics, not with strategies, not with breakthroughs. We begin with the truth. Because unless you understand the war happening inside your mind, you can't hope to overcome it. You will keep trying to fight the wrong battles, wasting energy, losing confidence, and wondering why you feel stuck, even when you desperately want to change. You cannot win a war you do not understand. And you cannot transform a life ruled by invisible forces. So listen carefully, not with intensity, but with curiosity. Because what you're about to learn is not a lesson, it's a revelation. Your brain is ancient, older than your dreams, older than every goal you've ever written down, older than every plan you have in your heart. It was built for survival, not achievement, not greatness, not extraordinary growth. Survival. Your ancestors survived by avoiding anything uncertain, anything uncomfortable, anything that required them to step into the unknown. The ones who stayed cautious lived longer. The ones who took bold leaps often didn't make it. So your brain evolved to protect you, not to push you. And that is why the moment you try to do something difficult, something demanding, something even slightly unfamiliar, your brain reacts the same way it did thousands of years ago when danger was everywhere. Not with clarity, not with courage, but with resistance. Resistance is not a flaw in your personality. It is not an indictment of your character. It is not something broken inside you. Resistance is a safety mechanism, a shield your brain built to keep you alive. But here is the irony. Today, in this modern world, the real danger is not discomfort. It is stagnation. It is the slow erosion of your potential. It is the quiet decay of a life that could have been magnificent but remained untouched because comfort felt safer. You're not failing because you can't do hard things. You're failing because your brain thinks hard things will destroy you. It is trying to save you, even when what you need is transformation. And that is why we begin with awareness. Because once you see resistance for what it truly is, it loses its power. Once you understand that the hesitation you feel is not fear of failure, but a protective reflex, everything inside you begins to shift. You stop blaming yourself. You stop criticizing your lack of motivation. You stop believing the lie that you're not capable, not disciplined, not driven. You start to see resistance as an ancient echo, not a truth, not a command, just an echo. And echoes can be ignored. Think back to a moment from your past, a moment when you knew exactly what you needed to do, but something inside you held you back. Maybe it was a difficult conversation. Maybe it was the beginning of a dream. Maybe it was an uncomfortable change you knew your future depended on. You felt the urge. You felt the desire. Maybe you even felt the excitement. But then, something pulled you away from action. Something heavy. Something familiar. You told yourself you'd start tomorrow or next week. You convinced yourself you weren't ready. You negotiated with yourself, built excuses, delayed the inevitable. And afterward, you felt that quiet sting of disappointment. The kind that doesn't ruin a day, but ruins your sense of trust in yourself. That wasn't failure. That was survival instinct. Your brain was trying to keep you safe from the unknown, even though the unknown was exactly where your life needed you to go. This chapter, the first step of your journey, is about finally naming that force. Because when you name something, you gain authority over it. So, let's name it clearly. Resistance is the invisible force in your mind that pulls you away from hard things. Not because you are incapable, but because you are wired for comfort. Comfort feels safe. Comfort feels predictable. Comfort feels like home, even when that home is holding you back. But what you want, the life you're trying to build, lives outside that comfort. Every dream you have, every skill you wish you could master, every version of yourself you imagine when nobody is watching, all of it exists outside the walls of safety your brain built to protect you. And that means something profound. Your life begins at the edge of resistance. Every time you push against it, you grow. Every time you let it win, you shrink. And that shrinking is subtle. On the outside, nobody sees it. You still look the same. You still laugh the same. You still move through the world as you always have. But inside, you feel the weight of avoided potential. You feel the heaviness of what you know you could be, but haven't yet become. You feel the silent ache of a dream you haven't touched in years. That ache is not failure. It is your calling. It is the part of you that refuses to die, even when you've ignored it. It is the part of you that knows you were made for more, even if your comfort zones have kept you small. This chapter is your awakening. The moment you finally understand why doing hard things has always felt like pushing against an invisible wall. You weren't weak, you were human. But now that you see the wall, you are no longer powerless against it. Imagine this. A person stands before a locked door. Behind the door is everything they've ever wanted. The life that feels like a perfect fit. The version of themselves who moves with confidence, courage, and purpose. They place a hand on the doorknob. They feel the weight of possibility, but the door feels cold, unfamiliar. The unknown behind it feels overwhelming. So they pull their hand back, telling themselves, "Not today, I'm not ready." Days pass, months pass, years pass. The person never turns the knob again, and slowly, without realizing it, they begin building a story in their mind. I guess that life wasn't meant for me. I guess I'm not the type of person who changes. I guess some doors aren't supposed to open. But the door was never locked. Their mind just told them it was. That is how resistance works. It closes doors that are actually open. It tells you you're not ready when you are. It convinces you the challenge is too big when it isn't. And the tragedy is not that people can't open the door. The tragedy is they never even try. You are not that person. Not anymore. This chapter is the moment you place your hand back on the doorknob. Not because the path is easy, but because now you understand what held you back. Awareness is power, and power is the beginning of change. So let us define the core purpose of this chapter, the foundation upon which the rest of this audiobook will stand. You must learn to see resistance, not as an enemy to fear, but as a signal that growth is near. The discomfort you feel when facing something hard is not a warning sign. It is a compass. It points you toward the edge of your potential, and at that edge, transformation begins. This is the heart of everything that will follow. This is the truth from which every technique, every strategy, every breakthrough will grow. You cannot learn to force your brain to do hard things until you first accept this. Your brain will always resist what elevates you, until you train it not to. This does not mean you fight yourself. It means you rewire yourself. It means you understand the old survival patterns, then create new patterns that serve your future instead of your fear. It means you stop asking your brain for permission and start giving it direction. The rest of this audiobook will teach you how to do that, step by step, layer by layer, moment by moment. But first, you must internalize this truth. Resistance is not your identity. It is simply your starting point. And every great transformation begins with a starting point that seems impossible until the moment you take the first step. That step is happening right now. Before we close this chapter, I want you to notice something subtle but powerful. Even as you've been listening, part of your mind has been awakening, not the part that worries or hesitates, but the part that recognizes itself in these words, the part of you that aches for growth, the part of you that knows you're meant for something larger, the part of you that understands, perhaps for the first time, that nothing has been wrong with you, only misunderstood. There is a fire inside you that has never gone out. Maybe it dimmed, maybe it flickered, maybe life covered it with layers of doubt, comfort, or exhaustion, but it never died. It was waiting for you to see the truth. And now you do. You are not fighting weakness. You are fighting ancient wiring, and wiring can be changed. That is the promise of this journey. Not that the hard things will suddenly feel easy, but that they will finally feel possible. And once something feels possible, everything changes. As we prepare to step into Chapter 2, I want to leave you with a simple question, a question that will be the bridge into the next stage of your awakening. If resistance is the force holding you back, what will your life look like once you learn how to move through it? Hold that question close. Feel the weight of it. Feel the possibility inside it, because in the next chapter you will step into the deeper truth. Not just why resistance happens, but how to break through it. And once you learn that, the door you once feared will no longer intimidate you. You will turn the knob, you will walk through it, and you will not look back. Your journey continues in Chapter 2. The moment your mind tries to stop you, there is a moment, a small, almost invisible moment when everything inside you tightens. It happens right before you begin something uncomfortable, right before a workout, right before a difficult conversation, right before opening a blank page, a new opportunity, a new chapter of your life. It's the moment your brain whispers, not now, not today, not yet. And if you pay attention, you can feel it. A subtle shift, a tightening in the chest, a heaviness in the limbs, a quiet pull toward anything easier, anything familiar, anything that doesn't require effort. In that single moment, your future hangs in the balance. Because most people don't even realize it's happening. They don't recognize this quiet, powerful force that rises up every time they approach something meaningful. They simply obey the hesitation, thinking it's rational, thinking it's their intuition, thinking it's them. But it's not intuition, it's not wisdom, it's not your true voice. It's your ancient mind trying to protect you from the unknown. This chapter is about that moment, the breaking point where people either rise or retreat, push forward or fall back, step into growth or settle into familiarity. If Chapter 1 was your awakening, Chapter 2 is your confrontation, because now you must learn what actually happens inside your brain the instant you try to do something hard. And once you understand that moment, you can begin to control it. Think of your brain as having two sides, two forces constantly negotiating with each other. One side is ancient, primitive, instinct-driven. It cares only about keeping you safe, comfortable, predictable, and unchanged. It is the guardian of survival. The other side is newer, younger, more aspirational. It sees your potential, your future, your dreams, your capacity for greatness. It is the architect of your evolution. These two forces are always in conversation. And every time you approach a difficult task, the ancient part of your brain speaks first. It moves fast. It reacts instinctively. It floods you with resistance before the logical part of your mind has even fully woken up. That resistance is not loud. It's quiet, elegantly quiet. It comes as a thought that feels harmless. I don't feel ready. I'm too tired. I'll start after I rest. I'm not in the right headspace. I should wait until tomorrow. Simple thoughts, reasonable thoughts, thoughts that feel responsible but are actually rooted in fear. And here is the truth. Many people never realize resistance doesn't show up as danger. It shows up as comfort. It doesn't tell you don't grow. It tells you, not now, and not now becomes not ever. One quiet hesitation at a time. But once you know what that moment really is, you can catch it, you can interrupt it, you can override it. You can look resistance in the eye and say, I see you, and we're doing this anyway. Picture this clearly. You decide you're going to start a new habit. Something meaningful, something that matters to you. You feel motivated, you feel determined, you finally feel ready, and then the moment comes. You stand at the doorway of action. You try to take the first step, and suddenly your mind stutters. It finds excuses with astonishing creativity. Let me check my phone first. I should clean up first. I'll start once I'm in the right mood. This moment, this 3-second window, is where most dreams die. Not because people are weak, not because they lack discipline, not because they don't want it badly enough. Dreams die because people don't understand that this moment is predictable. It is neurological. It is automatic. Your brain is designed to protect you from effort, uncertainty, change, and discomfort. It is trying to keep you alive, using instincts that no longer match the world you live in. This chapter exists to help you recognize the exact moment your ancient wiring tries to pull you back into the familiar. Because if you can feel that moment, truly feel it with awareness, you can catch it before it takes control. And when you catch it, you gain power, not over the world, but over yourself. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who wanted to become a runner, not to win races, not to set records, just to feel healthier, stronger, more alive. Every morning he set his alarm. Every night he promised himself tomorrow would be the day he finally stepped outside and ran. But each dawn, when the alarm rang, he felt a heaviness in his body, a weight in his chest, a fog in his mind that told him, not today, start tomorrow. He listened to that voice again and again, and each day that passed, he believed a little less in his ability to change. One morning, after weeks of postponing, he realized something. The voice that told him not today didn't just appear on running days. It appeared every time he faced anything difficult. Every single. So he decided to try something different. He didn't wait to feel motivated. He didn't negotiate with the voice. He didn't think about the run. He simply stood up, put on his shoes, opened the door, and stepped outside before the ancient part of his brain had a chance to talk him out of it. That morning he didn't run far. He didn't run fast. He didn't run with joy. But he did something far more powerful. He proved to himself that he could move through resistance. And that changed everything. Because once you prove to your brain that you are willing to act even when resistance rises, resistance begins to weaken. Not all at once, not overnight, but slowly, consistently, predictably. The hardest part of doing hard things is not the task itself. It's winning the first 3 seconds before you start. This chapter is your introduction to those 3 seconds. It is your reminder that resistance is always strongest at the beginning, never in the middle. The fear comes before you take the first step, not after. Once you start, something shifts. Momentum begins. Your brain transitions from protect to perform. Your mind switches from survival to presence. But you must cross that threshold. You must take that first uncomfortable step. Here's the truth most people never learn. You don't need motivation to begin. You need interruption. Interrupt the hesitation. Interrupt the ancient reflex. Interrupt the instinct to retreat. If you interrupt it, even once, your brain learns something new. I can do difficult things even when I don't feel like it. That belief is the seed of transformation. Grow it, and your entire life changes. So here is the core idea of Chapter 2, the foundation upon which the rest of your mental strength will be built. Mastering your mind begins with recognizing the exact moment your brain resists and choosing action before the resistance grows. Not after you feel ready, not after you feel inspired, not after you feel capable. Before. The moment resistance appears is the moment you must move, not dramatically, not forcefully. Sometimes it's as small as standing up, opening your laptop, taking a breath, sending the message, walking out the door. Small movements break big patterns. It's not about doing everything. It's about beginning, because beginning is the hardest part. Beginning is where most people fail. Beginning is where the mental war is won or lost. And you are learning to win that war, not someday, not eventually, but now. You might think, but how do I know when resistance is coming? You already know. You felt it 1,000 times. Resistance has patterns. It shows up with almost perfect predictability. When you try to grow, when you try to change, when you step toward something meaningful, when you face uncertainty, when the path ahead requires effort. Resistance is the gatekeeper of your evolution. And now, with awareness, you can see it clearly. You can feel it rising like a faint wave. You can notice it tightening your body, clouding your thoughts, distracting your attention. And in that recognition, in that sacred instant, you have the power to choose. Not the easy choice, not the comfortable choice, but the transformative one. This is the work. This is the training. This is how you force your brain to do hard things, not through brutality, but through clarity. Clarity gives you control. Control gives you movement. Movement gives you momentum. Momentum gives you everything. As this chapter comes to its close, I want to leave you with an image. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a river. On your side is everything familiar. The habits you've lived with, the fears you've carried, the comfort that has kept you small. On the other side is the life you want. Strength, discipline, courage, growth, purpose. Between you and that life is a current of resistance. Most people step toward the water, feel the cold, and turn back, not because the river is impossible to cross, but because they never even take the first step. But you are different now, because you can see the current. You can feel its pull. You can recognize its nature. And now, when your foot touches the water and the cold rises up your leg, you will not retreat. You will breathe. You will steady yourself. And you will step forward anyway. One step, then another, until you reach the other side. Not because the river got easier, but because you learned how to walk through it. In the next chapter, you will learn something even more powerful. Not just how to recognize resistance, but how to rewire your brain so it stops seeing hard things as danger. Because once your brain stops fighting you, your life begins to change in ways you never imagined. Your journey continues. Chapter 3. The moment your mind fights back. There is a moment in every person's life when the battle becomes real. Not imagined, not theoretical, not inspirational. Real. It's that moment when you stand at the edge of something difficult, something you know will stretch you, and you feel a quiet pressure rising inside your chest. A resistance that seems to whisper, not today, not now, maybe later. It's strange, isn't it? You want to grow, you want to rise, you want to evolve into the strongest version of yourself, and yet your own mind, the very engine of your potential, suddenly becomes the first obstacle in your path. In this chapter, we step into that battlefield. Not the battlefield of the world, but the battlefield within you. Because if you're going to force your brain to do hard things, you must understand why it fights you, why it pushes back, and why it resists the very things that would transform your life. And once you understand the truth behind that resistance, you will never fear it again. Your brain is not your enemy, but it is wired for survival, not success. And survival is a low bar. Your mind would rather keep you safe, still, and predictable than see you take a step into uncertainty, even if that uncertain step leads to greatness. This resistance isn't a flaw, it's an ancient instinct. Imagine you're holding a torch in the middle of a dark forest. You see a narrow path ahead, the path of growth, challenge, effort, and discomfort, and you see the familiar camp behind you, warm and safe, where nothing is expected of you. Your brain will always point toward the camp, but your future is always on the path. And this is the truth most people never learn. The level of resistance you feel is often the clearest sign that what lies ahead is exactly what you need to do. But let's go deeper, because resistance isn't just a feeling, it's a language, a signal, a map of the places where your potential is hiding. There was a young athlete once, someone with raw talent, but a crippling fear of failure. Every time training got intense, he'd pull back. Every time the coach asked for more, his chest tightened. It wasn't physical exhaustion, it was psychological noise. That voice that said, "What if you can't do it? What if you embarrass yourself? What if you're not who they think you are?" One day the coach sat him down and said something he never forgot. "The moment you want to stop is the moment transformation is just beginning." That line haunted him, because he realized he had been quitting right before the breakthrough. And maybe you've done that too. Not because you're weak, but because your mind convinced you that discomfort was danger, that effort was a threat, that pushing yourself was too risky. But here's the shift. Every great achiever eventually discovers you must stop interpreting resistance as a red light. Resistance is the green light. It is the signal that you are crossing the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. Let's explore something deeper. Your brain has two modes, the comfort instinct and the growth instinct. Both are powerful. Both are always active. But only one leads to a life worth living. The comfort instinct whispers, "Stay here. Don't change. Don't risk. Don't fail." It promises safety, but delivers stagnation. The growth instinct whispers something different. "Go. Try. Explore. Challenge yourself." But it speaks softly, and it requires faith. It requires courage. It requires trusting a future you cannot yet see. Every time you face something difficult, these two instincts collide, and that collision creates resistance. The emotional friction between your present self and your potential self. Here's the key. Your job is not to eliminate resistance. Your job is to move through it. Because the people who succeed are not the ones who feel the least resistance, they are the ones who don't let resistance decide their choices. Now, let's get honest. There are moments when doing hard things feels almost impossible. Moments when your mind builds walls you can't see past. Moments when fear, doubt, or overwhelm cloud your clarity. Maybe you've had days when you said, "I don't feel like it," believing that your feelings were instructions instead of information. But here's the truth most people never realize. Your feelings are not commands. They are simply signals. Signals you can acknowledge without obeying. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain and telling yourself, "I'll climb it when I feel motivated." You would never climb. Motivation is not the engine. It is the reward. It comes after you start, not before. The people who master hard things don't wait for the right feeling. They create the right feeling by taking the first step, even when that step feels heavy. Let me share a story with you. Two friends decided to start running early every morning. Both had the same goal. Both had the same enthusiasm on day one. But by the end of the month, one was still running. The other had quit. When asked why, the one who quit said, "I woke up every day and checked how I felt. If I felt tired or unmotivated or heavy, I skipped." And the one who stayed consistent said something completely different. "I never asked myself how I felt. The moment I wake up, I move." One person negotiated with resistance. The other walked straight through it. And that is the difference, a simple difference, but a life-changing one. In this chapter, there is one message I want you to absorb deeply. You cannot build a strong life if comfort is the first voice you obey. To change your life, you must understand this truth. Discomfort is not a problem. It is a path. Every time you feel that internal pushback, every time your brain says, "This is too much," that will be hard. You're not ready. This might fail. You must reframe it as the gateway to growth. Resistance is not a barrier. It is the doorway. And if you walk through that doorway often enough, something extraordinary happens. The brain adapts. The mind strengthens. The voice of fear grows quieter. The voice of courage grows louder. And hard things stop feeling impossible because you've trained your mind to stop running from challenge. As we close this chapter, I want to leave you with something simple, something powerful, something that will set the tone for the journey ahead. Whenever you feel resistance, that pause, that hesitation, that rising pressure inside your chest, don't run from it. Acknowledge it, recognize it, and walk forward anyway, because resistance only exists at the edge of growth. And the edge of growth is where your future begins. In the next chapter, we go deeper. We explore the moment you move from awareness into action, when your brain begins to shift, adapt, and reshape itself in real time. A new chapter of strength is waiting, and you're ready to step into it. Chapter 4, the shift from force to momentum. There comes a moment in every great transformation when something subtle, almost invisible, begins to change. A moment when the struggle you once wrestled with starts to loosen its grip. A moment when the weight you've been pushing doesn't feel quite as heavy. A moment when the mind that fought you begins to follow you. It happens quietly, not like a loud victory, not like a dramatic breakthrough, more like the way dawn replaces darkness, slowly, steadily, naturally, and yet when it arrives, everything feels different. This chapter is about that moment. The moment when forcing your brain to do hard things evolves into something more powerful. Momentum. Real, living momentum. The kind that begins inside you and spills into everything you touch. For most people, the journey toward discipline begins with force. Sheer, stubborn force. You drag yourself out of bed. You push through discomfort. You override excuses. You fight resistance with the strength of your future self, even when your present self feels tired or uncertain. But living your entire life through force alone is not the goal. Force is the ignition. Momentum is the engine. Think back to the first time you tried to move something heavy. A car stuck in mud, a large piece of furniture, a stubborn door that refused to open. The hardest part wasn't keeping it moving. It was getting it started. That first push demanded everything. Your muscles strained, your breath tightened, your whole body engaged. But the moment it began to shift, even an inch, something remarkable happened. The object moved more easily. The weight felt lighter. Your effort, though still present, seemed to flow instead of collide. That is momentum. And your mind works the exact same way. In the last chapter, we explored resistance, the emotional friction between comfort and growth. But now, we take the next step. We move into the world where the brain adapts, reshapes, and learns to follow the path you choose. Momentum begins with repetition, but it is fueled by identity. Your brain adapts not because you keep doing the difficult thing, but because you start seeing yourself differently as a result of doing it. There is a quiet power in the moment you go from, "I'm trying to become disciplined," "I am a disciplined person." The first is a hope. The second is a truth. And truth reshapes behavior far more deeply than effort does. Let's explore this shift with a story. A woman once struggled for years to build the habit of writing. She dreamed of creating a novel, but every time she sat down, her mind resisted. She doubted herself. She criticized her ideas. She waited for inspiration to arrive, and she lost momentum before she even began. One day, a mentor said to her, "You're waiting to feel like a writer before you write. But the identity only comes after the action, not before." That one insight changed her life. She committed to writing one page every day, no matter what. Not perfect pages, not inspired pages, just one page. At first, she forced herself through it. It felt heavy, awkward, unnatural. But after weeks of repetition, something shifted. Every morning she woke up and her brain didn't ask, "Do you feel like writing?" It simply recognized, "This is what we do." The resistance faded, the habits strengthened, and the identity took root. She forced herself at first, yes, but eventually the habit carried her. This is the power of momentum. The moment your brain stops being the barrier and starts becoming the partner. Now, let's bring this into your life, because you too are standing at the threshold of this shift. Momentum begins the moment the difficult thing stops feeling like a battle for survival and starts feeling like a natural part of your day. It doesn't mean it becomes easy. It simply becomes normal. And when something becomes normal, it becomes sustainable. Think of anyone you admire, an athlete, a creator, a leader, a disciplined human being. To them, what looks extraordinary from the outside feels ordinary on the inside, because momentum has taken over. Waking early isn't a battle for them, it's their rhythm. Pushing their limits isn't a crisis, it's their standard. Doing hard things isn't a heroic act, it's just Tuesday. And that is where your life is heading, toward a place where discipline doesn't feel like punishment, but like an expression of who you are. But let's be honest, before momentum becomes natural, there is a fragile phase, a delicate space where the habit is forming, but not yet secure. This phase is where most people break, not because they're incapable, not because they're weak, but because they mistake early friction for failure. Momentum begins slowly, sometimes painfully slowly, but the early days matter more than the later ones. These are the days when your brain is watching you closely, trying to understand who you are becoming. Every time you show up, even in small ways, even when you're tired, even when you don't want to, your brain rewires itself. It takes note, it adapts, it begins to believe you. This is what people never see. Momentum is built on thousands of invisible wins, not dramatic ones, not impressive ones. Quiet, consistent actions that slowly shape the architecture of your character. Now here is the truth most never realize. When you force your brain to do hard things, you are not actually forcing your brain. You are teaching it. You're teaching it what matters. You're teaching it where you're headed. You're teaching it that discomfort is not danger. You're teaching it that growth is the priority. You're teaching it that your future is worth effort today. And once the brain learns this, once it truly learns this, it begins to help you rather than hold you back. This is the moment the voice of resistance fades. This is the moment the excuses shrink. This is the moment the brain stops fighting and starts aligning. It is the moment you realize you're no longer pushing the boulder uphill. You're guiding it forward. Momentum has taken over. As we move toward the end of this chapter, I want to leave you with something deeply important, something you must carry with you as you continue this journey. Momentum is not magic. It is the reward for consistency. If you keep showing up, even in small ways, even on difficult days, even when you feel unready, your brain will adapt. Your habits will stabilize. Your identity will strengthen. Your life will shift. And soon the things that once felt impossible will become the things you do without hesitation. This is the beginning of a new kind of power. Not the power to force your brain, but the power to lead it. A quieter, deeper, more enduring strength. The strength of momentum. In the next chapter, we will go even further. We will explore how to turn momentum into mastery, how to build patterns so strong, so solid, so resilient that your brain becomes a fortress of discipline. You're ready, and your momentum is waiting to grow. Write Chapter 5 of a complete audiobook script. Follow the creative structure below to ensure the output is a pure voiceover script. No background music cues, sound directions, or stage instructions. Only deliver the spoken narration exactly as it would be read by a professional audiobook narrator. Chapter 4. the shift from force to momentum. There comes a moment in every great transformation when something subtle, almost invisible, begins to change. A moment when the struggle you once wrestled with starts to loosen its grip. A moment when the weight you've been pushing doesn't feel quite as heavy. A moment when the mind that fought you begins to follow you. It happens quietly, not like a loud victory, not like a dramatic breakthrough, more like the way dawn replaces darkness, slowly, steadily, naturally. And yet, when it arrives, everything feels different. This chapter is about that moment. The moment when forcing your brain to do hard things evolves into something more powerful, momentum. Real, living momentum. The kind that begins inside you and spills into everything you touch. For most people, the journey toward discipline begins with force. Sheer, stubborn force. You drag yourself out of bed. You push through discomfort. You override excuses. You fight resistance with the strength of your future self, even when your present self feels tired or uncertain. But living your entire life through force alone is not the goal. Force is the ignition. Momentum is the engine. Think back to the first time you tried to move something heavy. A car stuck in mud. A large piece of furniture. A stubborn door that refused to open. The hardest part wasn't keeping it moving. It was getting it started. That first push demanded everything. Your muscles strained, your breath tightened, your whole body engaged. But the moment it began to shift, even an inch, something remarkable happened. The object moved more easily. The weight felt lighter. Your effort, though still present, seemed to flow instead of collide. That is momentum, and your mind works the exact same way. In the last chapter, we explored resistance, the emotional friction between comfort and growth. But now, we take the next step. We move into the world where the brain adapts, reshapes, and learns to follow the path you choose. Momentum begins with repetition, but it is fueled by identity. Your brain adapts, not because you keep doing the difficult thing, but because you start seeing yourself differently as a result of doing it. There is a quiet power in the moment you go from, "I'm trying to become disciplined. I am a disciplined person." The first is a hope. The second is a truth. And truth reshapes behavior far more deeply than effort does. Let's explore this shift with a story. A woman once struggled for years to build the habit of writing. She dreamed of creating a novel, but every time she sat down, her mind resisted. She doubted herself. She criticized her ideas. She waited for inspiration to arrive, and she lost momentum before she even began. One day, a mentor said to her, "You're waiting to feel like a writer before you write." But the identity only comes after the action, not before. That one insight changed her life. She committed to writing one page every day, no matter what. Not perfect pages, not inspired pages, just one page. At first she forced herself through it. It felt heavy, awkward, unnatural. But after weeks of repetition, something shifted. Every morning she woke up and her brain didn't ask, "Do you feel like writing?" It simply recognized, "This is what we do." The resistance faded. The habit strengthened, and the identity took root. She forced herself at first, yes, but eventually the habit carried her. This is the power of momentum. The moment your brain stops being the barrier and starts becoming the partner. Now let's bring this into your life, because you too are standing at the threshold of this shift. Momentum begins the moment the difficult thing stops feeling like a battle for survival and starts feeling like a natural part of your day. It doesn't mean it becomes easy. It simply becomes normal. And when something becomes normal, it becomes sustainable. Think of anyone you admire, an athlete, a creator, a leader, a disciplined human being. To them, what looks extraordinary from the outside feels ordinary on the inside. Because momentum has taken over. Waking early isn't a battle for them. It's their rhythm. Pushing their limits isn't a crisis. It's their standard. Doing hard things isn't a heroic act. It's just Tuesday. And that is where your life is heading, toward a place where discipline doesn't feel like punishment, but like an expression of who you are. But let's be honest, before momentum becomes natural, there is a fragile phase, a delicate space where the habit is forming, but not yet secure. This phase is where most people break. Not because they're incapable, not because they're weak, but because they mistake early friction for failure. Momentum begins slowly, sometimes painfully slowly. But the early days matter more than the later ones. These are the days when your brain is watching you closely, trying to understand who you are becoming. Every time you show up, even in small ways, even when you're tired, even when you don't want to, your brain rewires itself. It takes note. It adapts. It begins to believe you. This is what people never see. Momentum is built on thousands of invisible wins, not dramatic ones, not impressive ones. Quiet, consistent actions that slowly shape the architecture of your character. Now here is the truth most never realize. When you force your brain to do hard things, you are not actually forcing your brain. You are teaching it. You're teaching it what matters. You're teaching it where you're headed. You're teaching it that discomfort is not danger. You're teaching it that growth is the priority. You're teaching it that your future is worth effort today. And once the brain learns this, once it truly learns this, it begins to help you rather than hold you back. This is the moment the voice of resistance fades. This is the moment the excuses shrink. This is the moment the brain stops fighting and starts aligning. It is the moment you realize you're no longer pushing the boulder uphill. You're guiding it forward. Momentum has taken over. As we move toward the end of this chapter, I want to leave you with something deeply important, something you must carry with you as you continue this journey. Momentum is not magic. It is the reward for consistency. If you keep showing up, even in small ways, even on difficult days, even when you feel unready, your brain will adapt, your habits will stabilize, your identity will strengthen, your life will shift. And soon, the things that once felt impossible will become the things you do without hesitation. This is the beginning of a new kind of power, not the power to force your brain, but the power to lead it, a quieter, deeper, more enduring strength. The strength of momentum. In the next chapter, we will go even further. We will explore how to turn momentum into mastery, how to build patterns so strong, so solid, so resilient that your brain becomes a fortress of discipline. You're ready, and your momentum is waiting to grow. Chapter 5. Do it even when you don't feel like it. There comes a moment in every journey when your motivation fades, your energy thins, and your mind begins whispering the oldest lie in human history. Not today. It's subtle at first. A quiet tug, a soft invitation to step back, to rest, to postpone. But if you listen closely, if you slow down enough to hear the truth beneath that whisper, you'll recognize something powerful. That voice isn't weakness. It's the barrier between the person you are and the person you're about to become. This chapter begins here, at the exact point where your comfort tries to negotiate with your potential. Because if you want to force your brain to do hard things, you must face the truth no one wants to admit. The moment you least feel like taking action is the moment it matters most. You've felt this before. Waking up with a plan so clear, yet somehow feeling no desire to take the first step. Knowing exactly what needs to be done, while your emotions drag you in the opposite direction. This inner friction is not failure. It is the training ground where self-discipline is born. Doing what you want to do builds convenience. Doing what you don't want to do builds character. And character is the only force strong enough to override the brain's instinctive hunger for ease. Your brain is not wired to make you great. Your brain is wired to make you safe. And safety lives in routine, in sameness, in predictable patterns that never threaten your comfort zone. But the problem is, growth doesn't live there. Transformation has always belonged to those willing to move forward despite the weight of resistance pressing on their shoulders. Imagine this for a moment. A sculptor stands before a block of marble. The masterpiece already exists inside, but only if the sculptor keeps chiseling, even on the days when fatigue makes the stone feel heavier than usual. If the sculptor works only when inspired, the statue remains forever trapped, unfinished, locked within the stone. You are both the sculptor and the marble. Your future is the masterpiece waiting beneath the hard surface of your resistance. Every time you push yourself, when every part of you wants to stop, you carve away another layer of limitation, another layer of doubt, another layer of fear. You're not just building discipline. You're revealing who you were meant to become. But here's the part most people never understand. You don't need to feel ready to take action. You just need to begin. Readiness is a myth your brain uses to delay your evolution. It convinces you that action should follow emotion. But the truth is, action shapes emotion. Action creates momentum. Action rewires the mind. Your feelings follow your steps, not the other way around. Think of the countless times you didn't feel like doing something, but once you began, the resistance dissolved. The workout became easier. The assignment flowed. The difficult conversation felt lighter. Why? Because motion disrupts stagnation. Because the brain is a servant to habit, and habit is built through action, not intention. This is the secret most people never learn. Your brain is not your boss. It is a tool that becomes sharper the more you use it against its own laziness. Some people wait their entire lives for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect inspiration. But masters of discipline understand something deeper. You don't rise to your dreams. You rise to your patterns. And your patterns are forged in the small, invisible moments when you do the hard thing, even when it feels impossible. Because that is the moment your identity begins to shift. Not when you plan, not when you hope, not when you talk about what you want to become. Identity shifts in the silence, in the early mornings, the late nights, the moments no one sees. When you override your excuses with action, these moments do not feel heroic while you're living them. They feel uncomfortable, irritating, inconvenient. But they are the building blocks of an unshakable mind. Let's go deeper. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the friction point. It is the exact second your brain tries to convince you to step back. A moment of hesitation, a pause, a thought like, maybe later or maybe tomorrow. But what is this friction really? It is your brain protecting an old version of you, a version built from habits you're trying to outgrow, a version that survived but never thrived. Whenever you feel that mental pull to avoid discomfort, recognize it for what it is, a sign that you are standing at the doorway of transformation. If you can move through that moment, not around it, not over it, but through it, you dismantle the pattern that once controlled you. Every time you choose action at the friction point, the point gets weaker. Every time you choose comfort, the point grows stronger. Over time, this becomes the difference between success and regret. Not talent, not luck, not intelligence, but the ability to act at the exact moment your mind resists action. Think back on your life for a moment. How many opportunities slipped away not because you lacked ability, but because you lacked consistency in the difficult moments? How many dreams became distant, not because they were impossible, but because the early steps were uncomfortable? We often blame circumstances, timing, or obstacles, but the truth is more intimate, more personal. We lose the battle long before the world gets a chance to test us. We lose it inside. In the hesitation, in the avoidance, in the quiet surrender to not today. But you are here because you're ready to break that pattern. Chapter 5 is the moment you stop negotiating with your comfort and start honoring your future. Here is the mindset shift that changes everything. You do not need to feel like it. You just need to start. You don't need motivation. You need movement. You don't need confidence. You need courage. the courage to begin before you're ready. Because once you begin, the discomfort becomes manageable. The fear becomes smaller. The resistance loses its power. Action is the antidote to every form of psychological paralysis. And once your brain learns that you will take action regardless of your emotional state, something extraordinary happens. You become unstoppable. Not because the world gets easier, not because the tasks feel lighter, but because you finally learn that feelings are temporary and your commitment is permanent. So let this chapter settle deeply inside you. Greatness is not built on emotion. It is built on responsibility, on discipline, on the daily decision to honor your potential over your mood. Every time you act when you don't feel like it, you stretch your capacity, you strengthen your willpower, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through no matter what. That identity, once fully formed, becomes the engine of an extraordinary life. And now, as this chapter closes, a new doorway opens. Because if chapter 5 is about doing the hard thing, even when you don't feel like it, then the next chapter is about something even deeper. How to build a mind that not only accepts hard things, but begins to crave them. A mind that transforms difficulty into fuel. A mind that sees resistance not as a warning, but as a sign that greatness is near. Take a breath. Feel the shift beginning. You're ready for what comes next. Chapter 6. Train your mind to crave difficulty. There is a moment, rare but unmistakable, when a person stops running from difficulty and turns toward it. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with a quiet, rising hunger. It is the moment the mind realizes something extraordinary. Hard things are not your enemy. They are the doorway to every version of you that you have not yet met. Most people never reach this point. They spend their whole lives avoiding discomfort, shielding themselves from challenge, pretending that ease is the path to peace. But ease has never built strength. It has never built confidence. It has never shaped a life worth remembering. So this chapter begins with a question only the brave can answer. What if your mind could learn to crave the very things you once feared? Not tolerate them, not endure them, crave them. Because when your mind hungers for difficulty, you become unstoppable. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. Deliberately, repeatedly, intentionally. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine standing at the edge of a cold river. The water is sharp, biting, almost painful. Your instincts tell you to step back. Your body recoils. Your comfort zone screams in protest. But imagine something else happening. Imagine a version of you who has trained their mind so deeply that the cold is no longer a threat. It is a challenge, a test, a sacred invitation to prove what you are capable of. So instead of stepping back, you step in. Not because the water is warm, not because it feels good, but because you want the strength that comes from entering it. That is the transformation we build in this chapter. A mind that moves toward the river, not away. A mind that wants the challenge, because it knows the growth hidden inside it. Here is the truth human beings often forget. Your mind adapts to whatever you repeatedly feed it. If you feed it comfort, it becomes soft. If you feed it excuses, it becomes fragile. But if you feed it difficulty slowly, intentionally, consistently, it becomes powerful. This is not philosophy. This is biology. The human brain is designed to rewire itself through repeated experience. It doesn't matter where you start. It matters what you expose yourself to. Every difficult thing you face with intention teaches your brain something new. This is not danger. This is development. And once your brain learns that discomfort is not a threat, something remarkable happens. It begins to seek it out. It begins to crave the feeling of stretching beyond your comfort zone. It begins to link challenge with reward, not the reward of pleasure, but the reward of personal evolution. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem carved from a different kind of discipline, athletes who train before sunrise, creators who hone their craft for years before recognition, entrepreneurs who push through uncertainty, failure, and fear. None of them were born craving difficulty. They became that way. At first, their mind resisted, just like yours does. At first, they dreaded the early mornings, the long hours, the setbacks. But somewhere along the journey, something shifted. The difficulty stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like purpose. They learned that each challenge wasn't a barrier. It was a compass pointing toward their next level. And the more they embraced hard things, the more their mind began to hunger for the process. Not because it was comfortable, but because it was meaningful. This is the transformation you are building now. Not the elimination of difficulty, but the elevation of it. To train your mind to crave hard things, you begin with one principle: difficulty is a signal. It tells you where your growth is hiding. It points directly at the skill, the habit, the mindset that will elevate your life. Every time something feels hard, it is a sign that there is strength waiting to be developed. Imagine for a moment if you lived by a single idea. When something is hard, that means I must lean into it. Think about how differently your life would look. How many doors would open? How many limitations would dissolve? How many fears would finally lose their power over you? Difficulty becomes a map. It becomes a guide. It becomes the most honest reflection of your potential. Your mind will begin to understand this truth the moment you commit to it. The more you follow the signal, the louder it becomes. But craving difficulty doesn't start with massive challenges. It starts with small, deliberate steps. Wake up when you said you would. Even if your body wants more sleep, finish the task. Even if you feel uninspired, choose the healthier option. Even if the comfort choice pulls at you, speak up. Even when silence feels safer. Every small act of choosing challenge over comfort is a vote for your future identity. And your identity listens carefully to every vote. If you choose difficulty once, nothing changes. But if you choose it hundreds of times, thousands of times, something extraordinary begins to form. A mind that trusts itself. A mind that knows it can endure. A mind that recognizes difficulty not as a threat, but as the clearest path to the life you want. This is the mind of a warrior, a creator, a builder, a thinker, a leader. A human being who refuses to be limited by the boundaries of comfort. There is another truth you must understand. Craving difficulty does not mean loving pain. It means loving possibility. Pain is temporary. Growth is permanent. When you train your mind to crave the challenge, you start to experience something profound. You begin to feel alive in the pursuit, not just the reward. Most people live only for the results. The finished product, the moment of achievement. But people with a trained mind learn to love the climb, the grind, the uncertainty. They learn to love the feeling of becoming. This is not about suffering. It is about awakening. Awakening to the truth that your greatest strength has always lived on the other side of things you once avoided. And now, let's talk about the deepest layer of this transformation. When your mind learns to crave difficulty, fear loses its authority. Fear thrives where comfort lives. It grows strongest in the spaces where we refuse to stretch. But the moment you begin seeking challenge, the moment you move toward the things that used to intimidate you, fear begins to shrink. Because fear cannot survive in a mind trained for growth. A mind that welcomes challenge is a mind that rejects limitations. It sees fear as information, not instruction. It hears the whisper of doubt, but does not obey it. This is the freedom you earn by craving difficulty. Freedom from the chains of hesitation, insecurity, and self-sabotage. You learn to walk with fear, but not behind it. And now we arrive at the heart of this chapter. You can train your mind for many things: discipline, focus, resilience, but craving difficulty is the foundation that amplifies all of them. A mind that craves challenge becomes a mind built for greatness. It is a mind that will wake you up before the sun because it longs for the satisfaction of doing the hard thing. It is a mind that will push through the last rep, the last hour, the last obstacle because it knows what lies beyond it. It is a mind that will choose truth over comfort, effort over avoidance, growth over stagnation. This mind cannot be stopped. It cannot be broken. It cannot be easily influenced or discouraged, because it has learned to find meaning in the struggle itself. And now, as this chapter begins to close, let me leave you with this. You are not weak for feeling resistance. You are not flawed for wanting comfort. You are human. But you are a human being capable of extraordinary transformation, capable of rewiring the deepest patterns inside your mind, capable of shaping a life defined not by ease, but by intention. Chapter 6 was about understanding the psychology and the power of craving difficulty. In the next chapter, we go even deeper. We explore how to build a system, a personal blueprint that transforms hard things from random challenges into a lifestyle of growth. This is where discipline becomes identity, where difficulty becomes direction, where the life you want stops being a dream and starts becoming a structure you live inside. Take a breath. Feel the strength rising inside you. You are ready for what comes next. Chapter 7. Building the system that makes hard things easy. There comes a moment in every transformation when willpower is no longer enough. A moment when even the strongest motivation trembles, when your emotions shift, when life becomes unpredictable and the fire inside you flickers instead of blazing. It is in that moment, not the easy ones, not the inspired ones, where your future is decided. Because greatness is not built on emotion. Greatness is built on systems. And if you want to force your brain to do hard things consistently, you must build a system that makes the hard thing the normal thing. Let me take you somewhere for a moment. Imagine walking into a room designed by your future self. A room where every detail, every layout, every tool, every object was placed there with one intention: to make the best version of you unavoidable. The books you need are already open. The clothes you need are ready. Your environment pushes you forward. Your habits guide you. Your choices become lighter, cleaner, sharper. You no longer have to fight yourself to do what's right. The system does part of the fighting for you. This chapter is about building that room inside your life and inside your mind. Not someday, not when life becomes calm, but now, while you are growing, while you are uncomfortable, while you are becoming. Because a system is what carries you on the days your strength is tired. Most people live in reaction. They wake up and let their day decide who they will be. Their phone dictates their thoughts. Their environment controls their impulses. Their habits follow emotion instead of intention, and they wonder why progress feels fragile. But the people who rise, the ones who build extraordinary lives, do something different. They design their days like architects. They don't trust motivation. They don't rely on mood. They don't leave their progress in the hands of chance. They build a structure around the person they want to become. Let me give you an image. Think of a river. If the riverbed is shallow, the water spreads everywhere, weak, unfocused, chaotic. But if the riverbed is deep and narrow, the water becomes powerful, concentrated, unstoppable. Your life is the same. Your system is the riverbed. Without it, your energy spreads thin. With it, your potential becomes a force. So what does a system really look like? It starts with one simple idea: reduce friction for the hard things, increase friction for the easy things. Most people live the opposite way. Everything that harms them is effortless. Everything that could transform them feels heavy. But when you intentionally redesign your daily life, you reverse that imbalance. Here's how it works. If you want to work out, lay out your clothes the night before. If you want to study, create a workspace that invites you in the moment you sit down. If you want to wake early, put your phone far from your bed. If you want to break a habit, make it inconvenient. If you want to build a habit, make it hard to avoid. A system doesn't use force. It uses design. Design that supports the identity you are growing into. You don't need more discipline than everyone else. You just need fewer obstacles between you and your higher self. There is another layer to this transformation. Your system must protect you from your weaker moments. Because even the strongest people have days when they don't feel like trying. Even champions have mornings when their mind whispers, "Not today." A powerful system steps in when your motivation steps out. If your meals are planned, you don't rely on impulse. If your time is structured, you don't drift into distraction. If your goals are written, you don't forget your purpose. If your environment is aligned, you don't fight hidden battles. You cannot trust your emotions to lead you. Emotions are weather. They shift with exhaustion, stress, uncertainty, fear. But a system is climate, stable, predictable, intentional. Build your climate, and the storms of life will no longer derail you. Now let's go even deeper. A system is not just environmental, it is psychological. To do hard things consistently, you must set rules for yourself. Rules that are non-negotiable, rules that shape your identity, rules that remind you of who you are becoming. A rule might be, I do not break promises to myself. I complete what I start. I leave no tasks half-finished. I act before I overthink. I don't need to feel ready to begin. Rules are anchors. They keep your mind steady when your emotions are turbulent. These rules are not restrictions. They are freedoms. Freedom from indecision. Freedom from hesitation. Freedom from the mental noise that steals your progress. Because when you know your rules, your decisions become simple. You don't debate with yourself. You don't bargain with your excuses. You act. And action, repeated often enough, becomes identity. But the most powerful systems are made of small steps. Tiny steps. Steps so small they feel almost insignificant. Yet each one builds momentum. Each one strengthens your discipline. Each one rewires your brain. You do not become strong by doing one hard thing once. You become strong by doing small hard things over and over, until your brain learns that difficulty is familiar, safe, even satisfying. Let me tell you something important. Your system is not built on intensity. It is built on consistency. Intensity burns brightly for a moment. Consistency builds a fire that never dies. This is how you become unstoppable, not by occasionally being powerful, but by consistently being committed. Small steps, every day. No drama, no theatrics, just quiet, steady self-respect. I want you to imagine something now. Imagine your future self watching you from a distance, not judging, not criticizing, just observing. What would they say about the system you're building today? Would they thank you? Would they admire you? Would they be proud that you chose growth over comfort? Or would they wish you had started sooner? Because the truth is simple. Your future is not created by your dreams. It is created by your systems. Dreams inspire vision. Systems create reality. Dreams ignite the fire. Systems keep it burning. Dreams tell you what is possible. Systems tell you what is inevitable. If you want a life of discipline, build the system. If you want a life of strength, build the system. If you want a life where hard things become normal, natural, effortless, build the system. And now we arrive at the transition, the moment where the ideas of this chapter turn into direction for the next. Chapter 7 was about construction, design, structure, the framework that shapes your identity and protects your progress. But a system, no matter how strong, is not enough on its own. You must also master the internal language that guides you through the system, the inner conversation that determines whether you will rise or retreat. Because the mind does not only follow structure, it follows meaning. And in the next chapter, we step into the heart of mental power, the words you say to yourself, the stories you believe, and the internal voice that either strengthens your courage or quietly destroys it. Breathe deeply. Feel the momentum building inside you. You are not surviving the journey anymore. You are shaping it. You are ready. Chapter 8. The moment you stop negotiating with yourself. Imagine this for a moment. You're standing in front of two doors. One door leads to the life you want. Discipline, clarity, strength. confidence, and the freedom that comes from doing what others avoid. The other door leads to the life you already know: comfort, procrastination, hesitation, and the silent frustration of breaking promises to yourself. And here's the truth most people avoid. Every day, every morning, every decision, you choose one of those doors. You don't choose them with words. You choose them with action, or lack of action. Chapter 8 begins right here, in that space between the life you want and the life you tolerate. In the space where your mind whispers excuses, and you decide whether you will bow to them or break them. Because the moment you stop negotiating with yourself, everything changes. And that is the transformation this chapter is here to ignite. There is a type of internal negotiation we're all familiar with. You feel the pull to wake up early, but your brain says, just 5 more minutes. You feel the urge to work, but your brain whispers, later. You know you should train, but you say tomorrow. You know you should speak up, start that project, make that call. But fear reminds you of the comfortable version of yourself. These negotiations happen quietly. They happen invisibly. They happen so quickly that you don't even notice how many times you surrender a piece of your potential. But here's the truth. No one says plainly enough. Every time you negotiate with your lower self, you lose. And every time you stop negotiating, you win. Let me tell you something powerful. There is a version of you, a stronger, sharper, fearless version, who already knows exactly what needs to be done. This version doesn't depend on motivation. This version doesn't wait for the perfect mood. This version doesn't drown in hesitation. This version simply executes, and the only thing standing between who you are and who you can be is the endless bargaining happening inside your mind. Humans don't fall behind because they lack potential. They fall behind because they keep debating with the weaker part of themselves, the part that wants ease instead of effort, comfort instead of growth, now instead of later. But the moment you decide, I'm done negotiating, your entire relationship with discipline shifts. Think of the strongest people you admire. Not physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They all have one thing in common. They stopped treating their goals like optional tasks. They turned them into commitments, non-negotiable, non-emotional, non-debatable. They removed the option to retreat. They made the hard choice once and then lived by it every day. You can feel it when someone has made that shift. Their energy changes, their presence changes. Their confidence grows from a different place, a place forged in self-respect, not mere motivation. Because when you stop negotiating with yourself, you finally stop betraying yourself. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you promised yourself that tomorrow would be different? How many times have you said you'd start, only to repeat the same patterns? And how many times have you felt the sting of knowing you let yourself down? You don't need another promise. You need a decision, a final one, a real one. A decision that says, I'm done explaining. I'm done delaying. I'm done quitting on myself. From this moment forward, I move. No debate, no excuses, no negotiation. That is how strong people are built, not in grand moments, but in quiet ones. In the moments where they choose action over argument with themselves. When you force your brain to do hard things, you're not just building discipline, you're building identity. Identity is stronger than motivation. Identity is stronger than mood. Identity is stronger than fear. Motivation says, I want. Identity says, this is who I am. Motivation fades. Identity endures. So what identity are you choosing? The identity of someone who hesitates, or someone who acts? The identity of someone who needs to feel ready, or someone who moves even when they're not? Because the people who achieve the extraordinary, they aren't fearless. They simply refuse to negotiate with fear. Let's go deeper. Your brain's default mode is protection. It avoids discomfort. It avoids risk. It avoids anything unfamiliar. So when you attempt something hard, your brain activates the negotiation process. Don't do it now. You're tired. You're not ready. What if you fail? Let's wait for the right moment. But the right moment is a myth. The perfect feeling is an illusion. Readiness is a moving target, and your brain will use that illusion to keep you exactly where you are. Unless you break the negotiation cycle, you break it by deciding that the negotiation itself is no longer allowed. You break it by acting the moment you feel resistance. You break it by removing choice, where choice weakens you. That's the paradox of discipline. You become more free by giving yourself fewer options. Picture this. Your future self is watching you. They know what you're capable of. They know the strength you still haven't tapped into. They know the life waiting for you if you stop giving in to the voice that keeps you small. And they're waiting for the moment you say, enough. Not for the world, not for others, not for applause, but for yourself. Because once you stop negotiating with yourself, you stop living a divided life. You become whole, aligned, unshakable. This chapter is not here to make you feel inspired. It's here to make you feel responsible. Responsible for your decisions. Responsible for your discipline. Responsible for the future you're building with every choice you make today. And responsibility is empowering. Responsibility is strength. Responsibility is liberation. Because when you take full ownership of your actions, there is no one left to blame and nothing left to wait for. You become the one that moves. You become the one that leads. You become the one who decides. This is where real transformation begins. So let me end this chapter with a question, one that only you can answer. What part of your life is still controlled by negotiation? Where are you still hesitating? Where are you still compromising? Where are you still allowing comfort to make your decisions? Chapter 9 will take you deeper into the psychology of discipline. But before you turn the page, sit with this truth. The life you want is not on the other side of motivation. It is on the other side of the negotiation you end today. And once you choose to silence that internal bargaining, you don't just move forward, you evolve. Now, take a breath and step through the door you've avoided for far too long.